Here's the thing about turning 50. Your company starts sending you emails about retirement planning seminars. Your doctor orders blood work that didn't exist in your 40s. And your 401k statement, the one you ignored for 15 years, suddenly becomes the most terrifying piece of mail you get all month. There's a guy in Ohio who spent 30 years climbing the corporate ladder, made $200,000 a year, owned a house worth $600,000, and then at 57 got laid off. Turns out he had $17,000 in retirement savings. $17,000. Another woman in Texas, 54 years old, burned through a $180,000 inheritance in 3 years. Not on drugs or gambling, on her adult son's failed startup, on a kitchen remodel she didn't need, on helping her parents with bills because nobody bothered to check if they actually had a plan. And here's the part that'll make you laugh. Both of them thought they were doing fine. They felt wealthy until the math caught up. So here's my question for you. If you're in your 50s right now, how many of these traps are you currently standing in? I'm gonna walk you through the 10 specific money traps that will absolutely destroy your retirement if you don't fix them in the next 5 years. Not motivational nonsense, not feel-good platitudes. Just the actual psychological and financial mistakes I've watched hundreds of Gen Xers make, including some I made myself before I learned to read the documents nobody else bothers with. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data. Link in the description. Think of your 50s like this. You're playing a game where the scoring system reverses. In your 20s and 30s and 40s, you're earning points. Mistakes are cheap. Time fixes most things. But in your 50s, the game flips. Now you're spending points, and the cost of mistakes compounds faster than your gains ever did. Every dollar you waste, every year you delay, every stupid decision you make thinking you still have time, it doesn't just cost you that dollar. It costs you every dollar that dollar could have become over the next 30 years. And most people don't realize the game flipped until they're 63, and it's too late to do anything about it. Let me start with a trap that's so obvious, everyone ignores it. Not paying your future self first. And I don't mean in some abstract, feel-good way. I mean the actual psychological failure to treat your retirement account like a bill that must be paid before anything else. There's this concept in behavioral economics called temporal discounting. Your brain is wired to value immediate rewards over future rewards, even when the future reward is objectively larger. A researcher named George Ainsley proved this back in the 70s. You'd rather have $50 today than $100 in a year. That's just how we're built. Now here's the problem. Your 50s are the decade where temporal discounting will financially murder you, because this is the last decade where your contributions actually matter. A guy who maxes out his 401k from age 50 to 60, that's $23,000 a year for 10 years, $230,000 in contributions. At a 7% return, that becomes roughly $318,000 by 60. Not life-changing, but solid. Now, the same guy who waits until 55 to start, he only gets 5 years. $115,000 in contributions becomes about $132,000. He cut his outcome in half by waiting 5 years. 5 years, that's the entire margin between comfortable and desperate. But nobody does this. You know why? Because paying your future self feels like a loss today. Your brain interprets it as money disappearing. There's no dopamine hit. No new car, no vacation, no immediate reward. So instead, people spend everything and then scan the wreckage at the end of the month looking for leftovers to invest. And there are never leftovers. Here's what works. Automate it. Not in a cute self-help way. I mean, literally remove your ability to make the decision each month. Set up automatic transfers the day after your paycheck hits. Increase your 401k contribution by 1% every quarter until it physically hurts. Open a Roth IRA, fund it automatically, then forget it exists. Because your conscious brain cannot be trusted with this decision. Your conscious brain wants the new couch. Your conscious brain thinks you deserve the vacation because you worked hard. And you probably do deserve it. But your future self also deserves to not eat cat food at 75. Automation removes willpower from the equation, and willpower is a terrible financial strategy. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Save more money. Groundbreaking advice, Tom. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people in their 50s don't have a saving problem. They have a leakage problem. Money is quietly draining out of their lives in ways they stopped noticing years ago. And the biggest leak is supporting people who should be supporting themselves. I know a guy, 52 years old, who co-signed a car loan for his 26-year-old daughter. She missed 3 payments, and now it's on his credit report, tanking his score right when he needs to refinance his mortgage. Another guy, 54, took out $70,000 in Parent Plus loans so his son could go to a private college to study film. The son graduated, couldn't find work, moved back home, and now dad is stuck with a payment of $640 a month until he's 70, with 8% interest. That's not generosity, that's financial self-harm. Here's the thing about money and family. The incentives are completely misaligned. Your kids have every incentive to ask for help because it's free capital with no strings attached. You have every emotional incentive to say yes because saying no feels like abandoning them. But economically, it's insane. Your kids can get loans, grants, scholarships, or they can work, or they can go to a cheaper school. They have time to recover from debt. You don't. You cannot get a loan for retirement. There is no scholarship for being 70 years old and broke. And yet, Gen Xers keep doing this. You know why? Because they feel guilty. They grew up in an economy where college was cheap and houses were affordable and a decent job was enough. Their kids are growing up in an economy where none of that is true. So parents feel like they owe their kids a financial cushion. But that guilt is going to destroy you. If you're in debt, if you're behind on retirement, if your emergency fund is empty, you cannot afford to subsidize another adult's life, period. Not co-signing, not funding college, not paying rent for a 28-year-old who should have figured it out by now. I'm not saying be cruel, I'm saying be honest. Your first obligation is to not become a financial burden on those same kids in 20 years. That's the actual loving thing to do. But let's say you've handled that. You're saving, you're not subsidizing adult children, you're feeling pretty good. Here's the trap you probably haven't thought about: tax diversification. Or more specifically, the complete lack of it. If all of your retirement money is sitting in tax-deferred accounts like a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, you're building a ticking tax bomb. Because you're gonna have to pay taxes on every dollar you withdraw. And depending on how much you saved, that could push you into a higher tax bracket in retirement than you're in right now while working. Let me give you the math on this. Let's say you retire at 65 with $1 million in your 401k. Congratulations, sounds great. Except it's not really $1 million. If you're in the 22% federal tax bracket and you withdraw $50,000 a year, the IRS takes $11,000 of it. $11,000 every single year. And that's before state taxes. Over a 30-year retirement, that's $330,000 gone. But wait, it gets better. Once you hit 73, you're forced to take required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The government decided you've deferred taxes long enough, now you have to start pulling money out, whether you need it or not. And if you have a big balance, those RMDs can be massive. $1 million 401k at 73 requires you to withdraw about $36,000. If you're still working part-time, or you have other income, that could bump you into a higher bracket. Oh, and if your income goes above a certain threshold, you also get hit with IRMA surcharges on Medicare. That's an extra $240 per month on your Medicare Part B premium, per person. That's another $5,760 a year in penalties for having saved too much in the wrong account. Isn't that fun? You played by the rules, you saved in a tax-deferred account like everyone told you to, and now the government punishes you for it in retirement. This is where it gets really interesting. The fix is to start diversifying your tax exposure right now. That means contributing to a Roth IRA. Roth contributions are made with after-tax dollars, so you pay taxes now, but all the growth and withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free. No RMDs, no forced distributions. No IRMA surcharges from Roth withdrawals. It just sits there, growing forever until you need it. And in retirement, having both a traditional 401k and a Roth gives you flexibility. You can pull from whichever account keeps you in the lowest tax bracket each year. It's a tax arbitrage strategy. But here's the problem. Most people in their 50s think they can't contribute to a Roth because they make too much money. And they're half right. In 2026, if you're single and make more than $165,000, you can't directly contribute to a Roth IRA. But you can do a backdoor Roth conversion. You contribute to a traditional IRA, don't take the deduction, then immediately convert it to a Roth. It's a legal loophole that's been around for years. The IRS knows about it and doesn't care. And if your employer offers a Roth 401k option, even better. There's no income limit on that. you can contribute up to $23,000 a year, plus another $7,500 if you're over 50, all into a Roth. This is the decade to build that tax diversification, because once you retire, it's too late. Now, let's talk about a trap that's boring as hell, but will quietly ruin you. Home maintenance. I know, thrilling, but stay with me. Your house is probably your largest asset. And if you're like most 50-somethings, it's aging exactly as fast as you are. That roof you put on in 2005, it's got maybe 5 years left. That HVAC system from 2010, it's on borrowed time. That water heater, it's a ticking time bomb. And here's the thing, in your 50s, you still have income. You can finance repairs if you need to. You can spread the cost over a few years. But if you wait until you're 67 and on a fixed income, a $12,000 roof replacement becomes a catastrophe. I watched my neighbor, a guy in his early 60s, ignore a small roof leak for 2 years because he didn't want to spend the money. By the time he dealt with it, he had mold in the attic, damaged insulation, and a $28,000 repair bill instead of a $4,000 patch job. He had to take a hardship withdrawal from his IRA to cover it, which means he paid income tax on the withdrawal, plus a 10% penalty because he was under 59 and a half. That $4,000 leak cost him over $35,000 in total damage. That's the cost of procrastination in your 50s. Small problems metastasize into financial emergencies. And while you're thinking about your house, think about whether it's actually going to work for you at 75. Is it a 2-story house with all the bedrooms upstairs? What happens when your knees go? Is it in a walkable neighborhood? Or do you need to drive everywhere? Because at some point, driving becomes optional, then dangerous, then impossible. A lot of people assume they'll just downsize in retirement. Sell the big house, buy a small condo, pocket the difference. Great plan, except housing prices have gone insane. The small condo you think you'll buy for $250,000, it's $400,000 now. And your big house that you think is worth $600,000, in a market downturn, it might sell for $500,000. Suddenly, your downsizing plan costs you $150,000. I'm not saying don't downsize. I'm saying don't assume it'll be profitable. The era of housing being a guaranteed wealth building strategy is over for a lot of markets. So if your current house works, fixing it and staying might be the smarter financial move. Here's a trap that's gonna make half of you uncomfortable. Letting one spouse handle all the finances. And I know what you're about to say. But Tom, we've been married 30 years, we trust each other, it works for us. Cool, I believe you. Now let me tell you what happens when it stops working. Divorce rates for people over 50 have doubled since the 90s. It's called gray divorce, and it's a financial nightmare. Because when you split assets at 55, neither person has time to rebuild. You take your half of the retirement account, your half of the house equity, and now you're starting over with half the money and 15 years until retirement. Or here's the other scenario. One of you dies, and the surviving spouse, who hasn't looked at a bank statement in 20 years, has no idea where anything is. They don't know the passwords. They don't know which accounts exist. They don't know if there's life insurance or what the beneficiaries are. I've seen this happen. A woman in her late 50s, husband dies suddenly. She discovers he had $200,000 in an old 401k from a previous employer that she didn't know about. Sounds great, right? Except the beneficiary was still listed as his ex-wife from his first marriage. Ex-wife gets the money, widow gets nothing. And there's nothing she can do about it because beneficiary designations override wills. That's not a marriage problem. That's an administrative failure that cost her $200,000. So here's the fix. Both spouses need to know where everything is. Not in a vague, oh yeah, we have some retirement accounts way. I mean specific. Where are the accounts? What are the login credentials? Who are the beneficiaries? When was the last time you reviewed them? And for the love of God, update your beneficiaries. If you got divorced and remarried and never updated your 401k, your ex is getting that money when you die. The IRS doesn't care what your will says. Beneficiary designations are legally binding and they supersede everything else. Check them today, right after you finish watching this video, because this is one of those things that feels like it doesn't matter until it's too late to fix. Let me hit you with a trap that everyone knows about, but nobody actually addresses: health. And I'm not gonna give you some corny speech about how health is wealth. I'm gonna tell you the economics of ignoring your body in your 50s. Healthcare is the single largest expense in retirement. The average 65-year-old couple will spend $315,000 on healthcare over the course of retirement. $315,000, and that's if nothing goes seriously wrong. If you develop diabetes, heart disease, cancer, any of the big chronic conditions, you can double that number. Now here's the part that'll really annoy you. Most of those conditions are preventable or at least manageable with lifestyle changes you can still make in your 50s. Walking 30 minutes a day reduces your risk of heart disease by 30%. Losing 10% of your body weight if you're overweight reduces your diabetes risk by 58%. Lifting weights twice a week reduces your risk of frailty and falls, which are the leading cause of injury and death in people over 70. This isn't about looking good. This is about reducing your future healthcare costs and extending the number of years you can actually enjoy retirement. Because what's the point of saving $1 million if you spend 10 years too sick to travel or play with your grandkids or do anything except sit in a doctor's waiting room? And on the topic of healthcare, let's talk insurance. Most people in their 50s are underinsured in ways they don't realize. You bought a life insurance policy in your 30s when your kids were little. Great. But have you looked at it recently? Is the death benefit still enough to cover your mortgage and your spouse's living expenses? Or did you buy a cheap term policy that's about to expire? And what about disability insurance? Most people assume it won't happen to them. But 1 in 4 people will become disabled before retirement age. 1 in 4. And if you're 55 and you get disabled, Social Security disability pays an average of $1,500 a month. Try living on that. This is also the decade where you need to get serious about long-term care insurance. If you wait until you're 65, it's either prohibitively expensive or you won't qualify because you've already developed health issues. But if you buy it in your early 50s, it's manageable. I'm not saying go crazy, but a basic policy that covers 3 years of care can be the difference between leaving an inheritance and leaving debt. Here's a trap that's almost too obvious to mention, but I'm going to anyway because people keep falling into it. Not having an emergency fund. You know the advice. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a savings account. And I know you've heard it a million times, but here's why it matters specifically in your 50s. You're more expensive to employ. If you lose your job, you're competing against people in their 30s who will work for less. The average job search for someone over 50 takes 9 months. 9 months. If you don't have cash reserves, you're going to be forced to pull from your retirement accounts, pay taxes and penalties, and permanently reduce your retirement balance right when you need it to be growing. Or you'll go into debt. And debt in your 50s is devastating because you don't have time to pay it off. A 30-year-old who racks up $10,000 in credit card debt can aggressively pay it down over 5 years and still have decades to recover. You don't have that runway. So if your emergency fund is empty, that's your first priority. Not investing, not paying extra on your mortgage. Building a cash cushion. Start with $1,000. Then build to 1 month of expenses. Then 3 months. Then 6. And for the love of God, do not invest your emergency fund in the stock market. It needs to be boring, liquid, and safe. A high-yield savings account. That's it. Not crypto, not individual stocks, not some complicated strategy your buddy told you about. Now let's talk about debt. If you're carrying credit card debt, car loans, personal loans, medical debt, anything other than your mortgage, your 50s are the decade to kill it. All of it. And I don't mean in some vague, I'll get to it eventually way. I mean you need a written plan with a deadline. Add up every dollar of consumer debt you have. Then divide by 60 months. That's 5 years. That number is your minimum monthly debt payment target. If it's $1,000 a month, you need to find a way to free up $1,000 every month for the next 5 years. That might mean selling stuff. That might mean cutting expenses. That might mean taking a side gig. I don't care. Because here's the thing about debt in your 50s. It's not just costing you interest. It's stealing your future. Every dollar you spend on debt payments is a dollar that's not going into your retirement accounts during the last decade where contributions actually compound. Let me give you the math. If you're paying $500 a month on credit card debt at 18% interest, that's $6,000 a year going to the bank. If instead you paid off that debt and invested $6,000 a year in a Roth IRA for 10 years at 7% return, you'd have $82,000 at 60. But you don't. You have zero because you gave it to Visa. That's the real cost of debt. It's not the interest. It's the opportunity cost of the money you'll never recover. Here's the biggest trap of all, and almost nobody sees it coming. Putting all your net worth into your home. You bought a house in your 30s. You paid the mortgage for 25 years. Now it's worth $700,000 and you owe $100,000. You feel rich. You're not. You're house rich and cash poor. And unless you're planning to sell that house and move into a van, it's not a retirement plan. Because you can't eat your house, you can't pay your electric bill with your kitchen, and the only way to extract value from it is to sell it, which means you need to buy or rent something else, which costs money. Or you can do a reverse mortgage, which is basically selling your house back to the bank slowly while paying them fees and interest for the privilege. Or you can take out a home equity line of credit, which is just another form of debt that you'll have to pay back. None of these are great options. The real issue is that a house is an illiquid asset. It's not diversified. It's a single asset in a single location, subject to local economic conditions. If your city's economy tanks, your house value tanks, if property taxes skyrocket, your carrying costs skyrocket. If the neighborhood declines, your equity declines. You have no control over any of it. Compare that to a retirement portfolio. It's liquid. It's diversified across thousands of companies and bonds. It generates income through dividends and interest. You can access it without selling your home. That's the difference between an asset that works for you and an asset you're trapped in. So if your house represents more than 50% of your net worth, you're overexposed. You need to be aggressively building your retirement accounts to balance that risk. Because the goal is to get to a point where you could lose your house and still be okay. Not that you want to, but that you could. That's financial security. Everything else is just net worth on paper. Let me give you a real case study to make this concrete. Two guys, both 50 years old, both making $120,000 a year. Guy A has a house worth $600,000 with $200,000 left on the mortgage. He's got $50,000 in his 401k because he started late. He's got no Roth, no emergency fund, and he's helping his daughter with rent, about $800 a month. Guy B has a house worth $500,000 paid off. He's got $300,000 in his 401k, $50,000 in a Roth IRA, and $20,000 in an emergency fund. On paper, Guy A has a higher net worth. $600,000 in home equity plus $50,000 in retirement equals $650,000. Minus $200,000 mortgage net worth is $450,000. Guy B has $500,000 in home equity plus $350,000 in retirement accounts equals $850,000 net worth. But ignore the math for a second. Let's talk about trajectory. Guy A is bleeding cash. He's paying a mortgage, subsidizing his daughter, and his retirement savings are growing slowly. If he keeps this up for another 15 years, he'll hit 65 with maybe $200,000 in retirement savings if he's lucky. Guy B is printing money. No mortgage payment means he can max out his 401k and his Roth every year. His $350,000 will compound to over $1 million by 65, even if he doesn't add another dollar. But he will, so he's looking at closer to 1.5 million. That's the difference between comfortable and desperate. And it all came down to decisions made in their 50s. Now, I told you I'd give you one more trap, and this one's gonna feel uncomfortable. If your parents are still alive and in their 70s or 80s, you need to know their financial situation. Not in a nosy way, in a survival way. Because if they run out of money, guess who they're calling? You. And if you're not prepared for that call, it's gonna derail your entire retirement plan. I know this is awkward. I know it's hard to bring up, but the alternative is way worse. I know a guy whose mother, 82 years old, ran out of savings. She'd been living on Social Security, about $1,800 a month, and it was fine until her rent went up and her medications got more expensive. She called her son, told him she couldn't make rent. He's 56 years old, supposed to retire in 9 years, and now he's sending his mom $1,200 a month to keep her housed. That's $14,400 a year. For 9 years until he retires, that's $129,600 out of his retirement savings. He didn't plan for it. He didn't budget for it. But what's he supposed to do? Let his mom go homeless? This is the nightmare scenario. And the only way to prevent it is to have the conversation now. Do your parents have long-term care insurance? Do they have enough savings to cover assisted living if they need it? What's their plan? And if they don't have a plan, you need to help them make one. Or at least prepare yourself for the reality that you might be financially supporting them. All right, let's bring this back to where we started. The game flipped. Your 50s are not like any other decade. Mistakes don't heal. Time is not on your side. Every dollar you waste is gone forever. So here are your 3 non-negotiable moves. 1, automate your savings like your life depends on it, because it does. Max out your 401k, fund your Roth, build your emergency fund, remove the decision from your day-to-day life. 2, kill your debt and stop subsidizing other adults. Your job is to not become a burden. That's the loving thing. 3, build tax diversification and liquid assets. Your house is not a retirement plan. Your 401k alone is not a retirement plan. You need multiple buckets, multiple tax treatments, and cash you can actually access. And if I'm being honest, which I always am, most of you won't do this. You'll watch this video, you'll nod along, and then you'll go back to ignoring your retirement statements and hoping it works out. And for some of you, it will. You'll get lucky. But luck is not a strategy. And the older you get, the more expensive luck becomes. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the reason is simple. It's boring, it's automatic, and it removes your ability to screw it up. So yeah, your 50s are the decade where you either get serious or you get wrecked. Choose wisely.